Hello everyone, Andrew Tenjum here, recording some Dredge for Cardhoarder.com. This hand looks pretty great. We have a Dredge enabler and a Dredge card, so that's all you really need to keep with a deck like this. But we also have a Shriekhorn, which is a pretty good second enabler to have, so we are going to keep for sure. And we are off to the races. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and lead with our Insolent Neonate. And I'm going to get to the dredging right away, so I'll go ahead and discard Stinkweed Imp, and then replace the draw ability on the Neonate with the dredging Stinkweed Imp. Alright, so we hit Life from the Loam as another Dredger, and then a Faithless Looting as the relevant cards. So not a fantastic dredge, but an acceptable one. Young Pyromancer, that is fine. Alright, so we're going to place our draw stuff with Life from the Loam. At least we get it. Dredging 3 isn't fantastic, but it's decent. Alright, so we hit a prized Amalgam as a relevant card. So our two options here are to cast Shriekhorn or cast Life from the Loam. In this case, I think I'm going to lead towards Life from the Loam, just because it guarantees we can dredge 3 next turn as opposed to just 2 with the Shriekhorn. I think we really just want to find a Grave Troll as fast as possible. I suppose Shriekhorn does mill 4 cards over after my untap step. However, I think Life from the Loam is also just more mana efficient in general. So go ahead and dredge, or not dredge, Life from the Loam back my 2 lands that I have in the graveyard. And then we'll go ahead and pass turn. So this is kind of a relatively slow start in dredge terms, but we kind of didn't really hit a Grave Troll or any good dredgers off our dredges, but that's something you kind of just have to live with when playing a deck like Dredge. Alright, so we got Blood Moon, which obviously isn't great, but it's completely fine because we can still flashback our Faithless Looting. So I'm going to go ahead and dredge Life from the Loam and hope we hit a good dredger. Alright, so we did not hit, okay, so we did hit a Stinkweed Imp, which is really good. So I'm going to go ahead and play our land, and then flashback Faithless Looting, replacing the first draw with Stinkweed Imp. Fantastic, we had a Grave Troll, so I'll replace the second draw with Grave Troll, and then we get to discard 2 cards. So let's see here. Just pulling out our graveyard. We have a Dredger. We have a Conflagrate, so we can actually discard any amount of cards in our hand once we untap because we'll have 2 red mana. We also have a Rally the Peasants, which is good to know. So for now, I'm just going to discard. Let's see here. I'll discard Haunted Dead and Golgari Grave Troll. And then we will pass the turn. I kind of just realized we shouldn't have discarded the Haunted Dead because we don't have black mana to activate it. I forgot that we don't have any black mana when we're under Blood Moon. So that was a mistake, however, not a huge one. Alright, so we'll go to our draw step, and we're going to dredge this Golgari Grave Troll for our draw step, just to dredge as many cards as possible. Alright, we hit an Archimeebo, which is decent. Triggers all three of our prized amalgams, so that's not bad at all. And the next thing I'm going to do is flashback Conflagrate. So with this Conflagrate, we want to discard all of our dredgers, I think. So 1, 2, 3, 4, Blood and Bloodghast. So we'll do this for 5 for now. So we'll do 1, 1, and 3. Paying red, and discarding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Alright, so he casts a Thought Scout response, which gets him a couple elementals, but that's fine. And it looks like he's also going to bolt us. Yes. So he'll have 4 elementals, but those we can deal with. More importantly, we got a bunch of dredgers in the graveyard, and we cleared off his young Pyromancers, which is pretty great. Alright, so next step, I'm going to cast the Shriekhorn and then use it on myself just to get a couple more cards in the graveyard. We'll see what will hit. Alright, and finally we'll play a tapped land and trigger all 3 of our Bloodghasts. So we're going to have quite a few things in play at the end of this turn. A bunch of triggers later, we will finally get to end our turn. And now we have a bunch of stuff in play, which is pretty great. Dragon Master Outcast is going to be way too slow for him. Alright, so start off by dredging Grave Troll again. And then I'm going to go ahead and use Shriekhorn on myself, because why not? And then I will attack him. Alright, Alright, so right now we have 7 going at him. Rally the Peasants can make it 8 more for 15. Oh, actually no, there's more than 7. I didn't see this prize element going on over here. So this is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then Rally the Peasants should make it plus 10 more, so that should be 20. So he might have something, but I'm just going to go for lethal anyway, because there's not much of a cost at this point. So we'll go ahead and Rally the Peasants. And our opponent is dead, so we'll move on to sideboarded games. Now, sideboard games with Dredge is always the scary part, because they could bring in any number of things that kind of just beat us by themselves. In this matchup, Blue Moon, I'm not entirely sure how to sideboard, but I think that we do want some number of collective brutalities, and let's see here. Dark Blast seems pretty good. We can probably board out some number of shoecorns, as this card's kind of mediocre. Maybe board in a couple abrupt decays just in case. And Rally the Peasant seems like one of our weaker cards. We don't need to kill our opponent quickly in this matchup because they're not killing us quickly. So we can kind of just play a slower, grindier game against them. And then finally, I think Haunted Dead is one of the weaker cards in the deck. So we'll go ahead and try this out. I'm not entirely sure if this is how you're supposed to sideboard in this particular matchup, but my process was just putting in some cards that I think have applications in the matchup, such as Collective Brutality and Abrupt Decay, and then taking out some of the generally weaker cards, non-specific to matchup, such as Rally the Peasants and Haunted Dead. So yeah, we're going to submit this deck for game number 2, although we might adjust sideboarding a little bit depending on what we see out of him in this game. Alright, this hand has no lands, so seeing as how... I mean, yeah, theoretically you could, like, keep this hand, discard Golgari Grave Troll the hand side and start dredging, but no lands is usually just too slow for a deck like this, so I'm just going to mulligan. And this hand isn't fantastic, but it's fine. I'll go ahead and bottom the land. It has a Dredger and an Enabler, and although this Dark Blast only dredges 3, it's actually just a good kind of magic card in this matchup, weirdly enough, as it's actually casting it definitely has applications. So I'm going to go ahead and start off right off the bat by dredging Dark Blast, and hopefully we hit a second dredger, so it's a little better. Go ahead and discard it, and then we'll dredge it. So we hit a Grave Troll and an Archimevo, which is great. We had 2 Grave Trolls actually, because the Grave Trolls we can start dredging next turn, and hopefully that can inspire a lot of control for our opponent. So our opponent kind of has a slow start here with a land that came into play tapped on turn 1, and then on turn 2 using that mana for Serum Visions. So maybe he has some great hate card in his hand, but it seems like if he doesn't, then he did keep a somewhat slow hand. Not that I know the rest of his hand, but it just seems a little slow to me, with the way it played out at least. So he's gonna get Taxian Probus. Him knowing our hand doesn't really matter, so I like the fact that he lost 2 life for essentially no reason. Not that he wasn't supposed to cast the probe, but if it's in his deck, he's kind of priced into it at that point. Second land, and let's see what he has for us. Nothing. Okay. So obviously I'm gonna dredge my Grave Troll for our draw step. what did we hit here? We hit Bloodghast and a Steequine up as relevant cards. So I'm going to start off by attacking him for damage. And then we'll go ahead and play this Stackmore Salvage, triggering our Bloodghast. And then suspending our Gargadon. So hopefully that Gargadon will be relevant a couple turns down the road. So we have a Faithless Looting in our graveyard, which is pretty great. Because next turn, alright, so I'm gonna take a counter off our Gargadon. And then for turn I'm gonna dredge another Grave Troll. We hit another Narcomoeba. So, okay, we also hit a Conflagrate, which is pretty good. I'm going to start off by attacking him. Just get a few points here, a few points there, and it really adds up. With this deck, and really any deck in Constructed Magic, or really limited Magic for that matter as well, so chip damage is great. Is a charm, he's going to do 2 damage to our Bloodghast. That's probably the best thing that could happen. So in response, I can go ahead and sack the Bloodghast, take a counter off this Gargadon. And we'll take a damage from our Narcomoeba. And in main phase 2, I could cast this Prized Amalgam, but I think the much better and more obvious play is to flashback Faithless Looting and hopefully hit some good dredges. So I'll go ahead and cast that Faithless Looting. Grave Troll is going to replace our first draw, and Steequine Imp is going to replace our second draw. And then we're going to discard Prized Amalgam, since we do have a Narcomoeba's trigger on the stack, and a Grave Troll, which so we can dredge that next turn. So we'll go ahead and return Narcomoeba, which does trigger Prized Amalgam. Never know how to pronounce that card. So during our end step, we will get the Amalgams back. So our opponent is like continually targeting us with his Thought Scours. Maybe his plan is to try to deck us, but that doesn't seem that reasonable, honestly. It's kind of just making the power level of our deck better. Alright, so our Graveyard Gargadon has 8 time counters on it. Just for those of you at home keeping track, we might be able to unsuspend it eventually. So during his main phase 2, I'm going to set a stop here because we can go ahead and sack our prized amalgams, and they're going to come back because of our other prized amalgam, which has a trigger already. So we're basically just going to get remove 2 time counters for free. Alright, so Young Pyromancer, that's fine. Relic of Progenitus, that's less fine. It's very concerning. Alright, so we can't make any of these sweet plays we were talking about because he now has a Relic of Progenitus, so we're just going to go ahead and go to our turn. And maybe he pops his Relic in response to our prized Amalgam trigger. We'll see what he chooses to do here. Alright, so he's going to pop all the graveyards. Which is fine with me. So during my upkeep, I'm going to go ahead and Dark Blast his Young Pyromancer. And then we can then dredge this Dark Blast back to our hand for our draw step. So go ahead and dredge 3, and we hit a prize Amalgam, which is not bad. Alright, so Greater Gargadon is on 7 time counters, so we really can't do much about that yet, so we'll just go ahead and attack him. Alright, so attack him down to 4, that puts a lot of pressure on him. I suppose we might have missed a line where we sacrifice all of our creatures and lands except for the prized amalgams. Let's see, that would be 9 plus, that'd be 15 damage. I actually remember what our opponent was at, but yeah, we might have missed that line, now that I think about it. But to be honest, I don't think it really matters. It seems pretty hard for us to lose from this spot in this matchup. Obviously, mistakes are never okay, but they're a lot better to make in spots where you're very far ahead, such as this current spot for us, I think. So we'll go ahead and tick that down to 6 time counters and dredge a Dark Blast for our draw step. And then we can go ahead and try to Dark Blast his Delver again. But I'm guessing our opponent is just dead to our attackers on the ground. Alright, so we do win that game and match despite some less than optimal play. But we are 1-0, and we'll move on to match 2 in just a moment.